we just feel like we're not even filling our own buckets and we're expecting our spouse to fill them, but we're like expecting them also to make us feel a certain way, like an emotional vending machine.
Hi, Skin Friend. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of The Skin Reel. This week, I'm really excited to be talking about something I haven't talked about on the podcast before, and that is the importance of our relationships. And I am talking about our intimate relationships, right? Like this is with the person, your life partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife, the person you maybe took vows to be married to and to take care of and to love and to respect and to honor, all of that. And at the time when we get married or we couple up, right, we have all these really amazing, great intentions. And then it's just like life gets in the way. And a lot of times our intimate relationships get sort of put down at the bottom of the list. And so I have my colleague and friend, Dr. Kate Mangona, on. She is a board-certified pediatric radiologist, but when she is not reading x-rays and CAT scans and all of that imaging in the hospital, she is also a relationship and intimacy coach. She is also host of Love Lab MD podcast and coaching program. And so she has a lot of experience helping couples reignite the passion and the playfulness in their marriage or in their relationship so that they can feel amazing, that their relationships can thrive, and that they can be happy and fulfilled at home as well as in work. So I highly encourage, if you are married or in a relationship, whether you're at a high point, a low point, or somewhere in between, you're definitely going to want to check out this episode. So many great tips and pearls. And it's also just important to take time to reflect on our relationships and our marriages. Sometimes we only reflect on it when it's bad or it needs fixing or it needs help. But really, this is something we should be thinking about on a more regular basis. And again, I really believe that skincare is whole body care. And so it's really hard to have amazing, beautiful skin when we're neglecting key components of our mental and physical well-being. And that's your relationship. Let's dive in. Dr. Mangona, I'm so glad we were able to make this work to actually talk together. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I know schedules are hectic and crazy this time of year. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Still at the hospital, as you could probably see, but my duties are finished. So figured I'd hop on here and we have a fabulous chat planned for today.
Being these physician entrepreneurs, right? Like we wear many hats and we multitask and we get our patient care done, and then we're out to spread information and education. Well, so I just gave an introduction at the beginning, but some people joining might be like, why are we talking about relationships and intimacy on a skin-focused podcast? But it's virtually impossible to talk about skin without thinking at least about beauty and aesthetics. And for some people, it's so intertwined, like they forget the skin even has other abilities for our body and our health. But I just find like skincare for so many people equates to beauty. And then, of course, beauty and relationships and intimacy seem to all go hand in hand. So that is really why I wanted you to be on the show, because this is your zone of genius, relationships and intimacy. But I would love for you to just introduce yourself to the audience in your own words.
My name is Kate Mangona. I'm a pediatric radiologist and a marriage and intimacy coach. I'm the mom of 3 little girls. I'm married to a physician, so we're a dual physician household. We're real estate investors, and I have my own podcast, Love Lab MD, and a coaching program and host intimacy retreats. And I totally agree that a lot of actually my clients, my women clients, come to me and say they want to feel more comfortable in their own skin and they want to feel more feminine. They want to feel more like comfortable being more intimate, even like finding those moments of pleasure with themselves. And it's so hard when sometimes post-baby or they just haven't gotten back to their normal, whatever it is, kind of self-care, skincare routine, all those types of things, looking at themselves in the mirror, telling themselves they're beautiful and fabulous. All this stuff really does affect how you show up in your relationship.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like as women, there's so much pressure. I mean, I'm in my mid 40s now and I see it, and I see it in my friends and family. Like things change. And if it's not when you're younger and you're feeling maybe insecure or you're wondering, am I going to meet the right person? And then when you do meet the right person, then you have kids and your whole body changes with that. And, of course, like your whole relationship changes with that. And then now, as someone in her 40s, I see that our skin, our bodies are changing yet again. And for a lot of people, it's disturbing. It really affects them emotionally. And then, of course, they don't feel attractive. And then that again cycles back to their relationship, right? You see that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the biggest issue for people in relationships who have, or we could say women in relationships, right, who are doing what we're doing, juggling work outside the home, or even if you're not, juggling life with children, and maybe you've been married 10 years? What are some of the struggles that you see happening?
Well, especially when you're ambitious, high achieving professional woman, we forget that we place all these demands on ourselves. So we tend to lead with, I have to go to work. I have to pick up my kids. I have to go to performances. I have to show up for my best friend. I have to do this for my colleague at work. Like we think there's all these things we have to do. And then at the end of the day, we're exhausted, depleted, and we're like, oh, I don't really have to be there for my husband, or like he'll understand, or I'm just too exhausted. And the truth is, we get to decide, where we spend our energy and who we prioritize. And as caretakers, we try to take care of everybody. That's just kind of like innate in us. And so we have to really take a step back and be mindful about, okay, I have this much energy for one day. Where do I want to place it? With my patients, with my best friend, with my husband, with my wife, with my children, and just be mindful that usually we don't have an infinite supply of energy in one day. And I even work with energy healers. I work with like energy doctors. So I totally believe that there's like different ways of focusing your energy, having more energy in your life. But we have to realize we can't do everything all at the same time. Like we're powerful, we're amazing, we're beautiful women, and we can do it all, but we have to decide, what are we going to do today? What's going to be our goal today? What's going to be our focus? And do we want to prioritize our relationship instead of put it on the back burner? And so when people come to me, they will often come with like, I'm doing all this, my husband's doing nothing sometimes. Now, a lot of the people, most couples who actually come to me both think they're doing a lot, and there's nothing we can cut out. And then we have to talk about like outsourcing household tasks, family tasks. Okay, what can we cut out? And then sometimes the women, like we started off saying, we just feel like we're not even filling our own buckets, and we're expecting our spouse to fill them, but we're like expecting them also to make us feel a certain way, like an emotional vending machine. I can go on and on and on, Dr. Mina.
I like that concept, an emotional vending machine. Like, today I'll take humor and, I need a little bit of comfort. I totally can see that. I mean, this is something I'm really working on, is like waking up in the morning and having like 3 top goals that I need, because usually if we previously would do that, it would be my to-do list. It would be my errands to run or emails to respond to. And that's like the totally wrong thing to do. I've now learned at 44, right? Like my day should not be dictated by my errands and to-dos. Like that stuff has to get done, but there needs to be like bigger goals than that. And I can totally relate to, you run around all day, you do, I'm taking care of patients, I'm making sure kids are good or whatever you're doing. And by the time I get to my husband, it's like, I don't have any more energy. Good night. I want to read my book. Goodbye. I'll see you in the morning. Every now and then, fine. But when that's your life, day in and day out, right? It starts to feel like roommates, right?
You could be cordial roommates, or you can be loveless roommates, right? So you just have to become aware, and then what is intimacy really? Intimacy doesn't have to mean just intercourse. It can mean so much more. Like, are you saving space for holding hands, for hugging, for back rubs? Do you show up to your husband feeling beautiful already? or husband or wife or partner? Or are you coming expecting him to make you feel beautiful? And he can still, he or she can make you feel beautiful. But if you came like already feeling fabulous, already being confident, like that is where relationships explode, when you have two people who are working on themselves and growing internally themselves and then growing together. And then that's where the sparks fly.
Not expecting the other person to actually complete you, right? Like you come complete and they are sort of the icing on the cake. Well, I see this a lot in my field of dermatology with aesthetics and things like that. I know when someone comes to me and they want all these things fixed, or they see nothing good about themselves, are kind of unrealistic. They want to go back to looking like they did at 25. I know no matter what, they're not going to be happy, because I can put sort of the finishing touches on things and improve some stuff and really like help your confidence. But I cannot totally fix everything, right? It really has to come from the inside out, is what I'm learning. And it's so much deeper than just getting some Botox or getting some fillers, because those are like the finishing final like touches on it. You can't rely on that, just like you can't rely on your spouse to totally fulfill you and complete you.
Fillers and Botox do not fix your emotions.
I do believe in like when you look good, you feel good, right? Like if I get my hair done or a nice blowout, or I've got like my makeup on, or I'm feeling like put together, I've got a cute outfit on, like of course, like that makes me feel good. And maybe it doesn't make everyone feel good, but personally that does make me feel good. But I can't rely on that to like totally fulfill me and everything. So I would love to know, like, what can you do? Because someone listening might be like, with everything on my plate, now you're telling me to like come emotionally fulfilled and all this. Like, how do you do that?
How do you do that? How do you come to the relationship already emotionally fulfilled? Well, you don't have to come 100% fulfilled. We can take steps, right? But how do you want to show up in your relationship? You get to decide. Do you want to show up loving? Do you want to show up supportive? And this is the question I like to ask first, even before that, is who do you want to be married to? Okay. Who do you want to come home to? Is that somebody who's angry and resentful and sarcastic or critical? And then evaluate, maybe that's what, not what my spouse wants to come home to either. Maybe they want to come home to somebody who's loving, who's supportive. And because when you lead in the romantic side of your relationship, when you lead, and it's like in any relationship, with kids, with coworkers, if you lead with support, with love, with encouragement, with empowerment, it's going to be so much easier for the entire conversation, energy of the room, vibration to kind of go towards that direction. So just the awareness, like, okay, how am I showing up now? Exhausted. Okay. Exhausted because why? Because I feel like I have to do everything. Exhausted because I'm feeling so disrespected or resentful. Like, figure out, what is it that's not quite sitting right with you? Like, how are you showing up on a daily basis? And not a lot of people actually sit down and evaluate this, because again, we're waiting for somebody else to fix it. And we thought we were in this relationship so that somebody else could fix it for us sometimes. So I just encourage people to ask themselves, who do they want to be married to? Could you attempt to be that way? And not 100% of the time, but maybe 5% more than you already are. And then notice what that does to the entire day or to that hour. I had a recent client, we're talking about negative reinforcement versus positive reinforcement. This is like really big in the parenting world right now, right? Leading with, our generation tends to want to lead with positive reinforcement. So every time you see your children behaving well, you're going to positively reinforce them instead of getting mad at them for doing something bad. And then that whole other thing, whole other topic of discussion. But we were using those concepts in her relationship. And what I told her was, the positive and negative reinforcement, whatever you're labeling that as, that's not for you to decide. That's for your husband to decide. So if you are doing something which you think is supportive and a positive reinforcement, you actually have to check in with him and ask and be like, in whichever words, like, come naturally to you? Is this supportive? Were those words supportive? Like, did you find this actually positive? And because they get to choose, the receiver gets to choose whether your response or reaction or action was positive or negative reinforcement, which is kind of not that common sense for a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I said this and I meant to be supportive, but they didn't receive it that way. How could they, you know?
That's actually really interesting. I've never heard that. But of course, yeah, with kids, it's like, don't always be pointing out their flaws or the negative, but it's a really interesting take on it for dealing with your spouse and your partner. And yeah, I know, like I read what is it, the 5 love languages, and learning my love language is not the same as my husband's. And so just because I would prefer just something being done, I think it's acts of service, right? Like for me, it's like just take out the trash or just move that bag that's been sitting there that's too heavy for me to pick up. But for him, it's words of affirmation and physical touch. And so just making sure, like, because I might do something for him, but he may not see that in the positive light that I take it as. And he gets to decide that, not me, because that's my love language.
Right. Exactly. And when you even inquire or like ask your spouse, like my clients did, she asked him, hey, I feel like been trying to be really supportive this past week and give you your space, or you're dealing with this at work. Like, have you noticed? Is it working? And he was just like taken aback, like, oh my gosh, she's never asked me before if like I have felt supportive. She's always just expected that, I receive it that way. So it kind of really enhanced their level of, I would say, emotional intimacy and conversational intelligence in that one setting. And the same thing, right, with the love languages. I would like all of them.
You're all of them, huh? I do think we also we have some gender biases, right, in this area, or at least maybe it's just me, but I feel like we expect men to not be emotional and to not need as much emotional encouragement or support, that they're these like strong rocks and they don't feel the things that we feel as women. But I think that's actually wrong. I mean, I know my husband can be very sensitive and I know he feels things. Maybe he doesn't show it as outwardly as someone else, but I think there's this misconception that men, or this like gender bias that we really need to move beyond, that men don't have these emotional needs, that it's all physical, which, yeah, I mean, I'd love your thoughts on that.
I totally agree. I mean, I married a sensitive soul. My father also was very stoic and very strong, like a manly man, but he could take to heart what you said to him. So we have to understand our language of communication, not necessarily love language, might just be different than theirs. So picking up on that, noticing little nuances in tone, in body language, instead of, right, say your husband gets upset and he might shut down or he might burst out in anger, either way. Like what I always tell my clients is it's really not about you. Meaning like if it was me and my spouse was getting all angry or shutting down and going somewhere else, it's not about you. There's no reason to like all of a sudden get angry that he's angry or get defensive that he's shutting down. That's just going to cause the cycle, right? The pattern. Also, as a relationship coach, I look a lot of patterns. Then the cycle is just, you're going to just go down that spiral. But if you notice, okay, he shuts down, or when he gets angry, I get angry. What if when he gets angry, I get curious? Or what if when he gets angry, I become loving, or just experiment with, when he gets angry, what if I give him space or do something different, change the pattern up? Usually the cycle stops and then you can figure out what to do from there. Same thing if, they shut down and retreat, figuring out what they need instead of sitting there or stewing in anger or resentment. And, this all comes down to you showing up confidently and loving, knowing that it's going to all work out, and it's not about each other's flaws, right? Accepting that we're both human in the relationship. We're allowed to make mistakes. Neither of us are perfect. So for some reason, I feel like we're such perfectionists or recovering perfectionists, of recovering people pleasers. As women physicians, we expect that they have to be perfect too, because we beat ourselves up, right? We have to remember that they're human just as much as we are. we need to learn to give ourselves grace and learn to give our spouse grace. Everybody grace. I feel like I see so many women physicians beating themselves up for making mistakes. And so it's just kind of our natural tendency to do that with our spouse too.
Absolutely. And sometimes I'll wonder, like, does he even feel the same way? Like, here I am stewing over something, and it seems like he's just living his life without, but he's just showing it in a different way. But yeah, I think that's such an important point to take home. And what about the whole like blame game, right? I feel like this is big in relationships too, right? Where you like keep tabs on the things they did wrong and you throw it back at them when you're upset. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, you're just digging your own hole. You are pouring your own poison and taking your own poison. That is what you're doing. When you're like keeping track, tit for tat, like you are stewing in your own anger. You're perpetuating that. And until you realize, most people don't realize that. They really don't. So like key number one here is awareness. Is that me? Is my anger coming from within me, or is it coming from the fact that my spouse didn't wash the car like I asked him to and didn't pick up the kids on time or didn't get the right stuff from the grocery store, or isn't helping out with household tasks or whatever, right? You get to decide, is that coming from me or from him? And I'll tell you, the correct answer is your emotions come from within you. Have you seen that movie Inside Out?
About the emotions. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Those emotions come from inside of us. I think not enough people realize that. So you get to decide, are you going to drink the poison today? Stay in that resentment? Or is it like, where is it coming from?
I love that movie for so many reasons, and the first one too. It's so accurate. Yeah, all these emotions, they're inside us. And I'll tell it to my kids because it's easier to see their mistakes and try to correct it, right, than to see my own. But I'll tell them, like, you can't control how other people act or respond or treat you, right? Like even your spouse. And but you can control how you respond to that, how you react. And I love your comment about how you have to break that cycle, right? It's so easy to get into that pattern of one raises the voice, the next one raises the voice. But like, what if you actually didn't raise your voice? What if you actually just calmly responded or cooled off for 5 minutes or talked about it when you weren't angry, right? Like, and I know it sounds like, oh yeah, I'll do that next time, right? But then in the heat of the moment, it gets so hard, right? That little angry guy emotion inside of us takes over, and we don't even think straight when we're angry like that.
Yeah. And then that's when you can decide to take a pause, a timeout, figure out what it is you need. I mean, there's like hundreds of things you could do. What that's called amygdala hijack, when you're just angry in that moment. The average person, when they're hijacked by their amygdala, which is all those angry fight or flight or freeze emotions, the average person needs 20 minutes of not thinking about that. So that means not stewing in anger, not ruminating, not continuing the conversation, but maybe taking a break, like a walk outside, maybe cleaning the kitchen, maybe looking at funny memes on their phone or funny videos of their kids, or dancing, dancing in the family room. So you have to give yourself that reset. And the other question I said, if you are feeling constantly disrespected or angry or resentful for your spouse, then why are you married? I'm not a marriage coach to keep you married. Like, I'm not the coach of marriage. I am a coach of happy couples, a happy, empowered, like couples who want to be together. So you ask yourself, why are you married? Okay. And then when you ask yourself that, are there any happy moments that come up? Are there any great beliefs and thoughts? Oh, because he really is supportive. Oh, yeah. I mean, because really is a great guy. Like, well, what? Like, tell us. Because where your focus goes, your energy will flow. And that is a quote by Tony Robbins that I use a lot. Like, if you're always focusing on the negative or what there is to be resentful for, the tasks that are undone, then you are going to go into that negative energy space. But if you remind yourself why you actually want to be married, why you are, oh, he's this amazing, multi-talented, he really does take care of things. He does take care of me. I'm just, so evaluate that. Because if you're going to be angry and resentful in your marriage, leave. You got to give yourself permission to leave. But I always say leave from a place of love, and leave after you've kind of done a lot of internal work to realize, hey, I'm showing up loving, I'm showing up respectful and supportive. But you guys may seriously just be in one of these bad cycles after so many years of marriage and things have gotten comfortable that you need a reset. And you need somebody from the outside to kind of be like, check your thoughts, Are these really true? Are these keeping you stuck?
I feel like I'm at the age too. I'm starting to see some of my friends, our couples friends, divorcing or going through hard times. And yeah, all marriages go through hard times. Yeah. And if it's truly toxic, harmful, hurtful, then you shouldn't put up with that. You should get out. But I find that a lot of people, yeah, you just get in that rut and life gets busy and you just keep going along and you're not even really working on your relationship or your marriage. And then I find people are like, well, I just give up or quit. But the same stuff's going to happen again with the other relationship unless you change how you're coming to the table, right? Like all relationships are amazing and fun and exciting in the beginning, right? And then throw some children in and some, midlife work and everything. And it's not all fun and games anymore, really, no matter who you're married to. So that's one thing I've realized. I've been married, going on 14 years now. And I just realized like a couple weeks ago, like I haven't been on a one-on-one date with my husband in, I think months. And we used to be pretty good at it. But I think with summer and travel and everything, we've been together because we're traveling with a family, but we need that together time just with us. And sometimes my kids have a hard time understanding that. Why do you and dad need to go out without us? I'm like, because your relationship should come before your children. Your children leave, right? They're here for just a finite time and then they go off and have their own lives. But yeah, just getting my kids to realize it's important for mom and dad to have time together because that's how we keep our relationship strong. But it's just been, I couldn't believe how long it's been. So we penciled something in 2 weeks. We're going to go to dinner.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. You're modeling what healthy relationships or unhealthy relationships look like for your children. Like you are their normal. So they're going to go out thinking that whatever they see is normal. And you modeling for them, right? Taking time away from them to go spend with your partner is healthy. And that doesn't mean you're not prioritizing them. You can still prioritize everybody at different times. It just keeps your relationship so much healthy and stronger. And you're just leading the way. This weekend, Victor went to go play tennis. My husband went to go play tennis with my 7-year-old. And I really wanted to do like a little dance. I wanted to do this like little dance I found on Instagram. Me and my husband love dancing. We just don't prioritize it. But I decided I was going to follow them to the tennis courts. I was going to do some stuff on my phone, practice, and then ambush them, but then not ambush. Then after they were tennis, we were going to do the dance together and I was going to record it. And it was really a fun, it wasn't necessarily one-on-one time. It was with my husband. My 7-year-old was there, but my 2 younger girls were back. And it's like, I decided, hey, we're going to do this together. I'm going to meet you where you are. And I know you love dancing, but neither of us prioritize it. So it's like, who's going to prioritize what we want to do? And we had so much fun. We did it, recorded it. I'm going to post it later.
Oh, I can't wait.
We did that when you brought up one-on-one dates. We used to do dance dates all the time during COVID when we just would go dance in the park. And now life is so much more busy and social with the social obligations that I'm so thankful we have now.
I know, right? I love that you're still playful with your spouse because I find that goes too, right? It just becomes really transactional for a lot of relationships. And it's just like getting the stuff done during the day and crossing off the checklist and the to-dos. And that element of playfulness that's in the relationship when you first meet and you're together, it goes away unless you actively try to bring that back. Because you could have very easily said, I'm just going to veg out and, scroll or watch TV or read or whatever. But you were like, hey, I'm going to go dance and do a
TikTok dance, Instagram dance, because I am not a tennis player. Okay. So yes, I could be resentful staying at home, I'm stuck with the other 2 kids. In-laws were in town, so they were okay. But no, I'm like, I'm going to go have my alone time and then go be with them. And I totally encourage lots of fun and playfulness in everybody's relationships, especially your intimate relationships. I even recommend if you think your spouse is making fun of you, and you feel yourself getting kind of hey, why would you say that? Or like starting to get defensive, what I like to do is I just like to start poking my husband in his underarm. And then he like kind of goes like this. And then it makes me laugh. And then like he's laughing. But it takes my focus off of whatever just stupid thing he might have just said. Some people don't really think before they say things, or you're just interpreting it, right? Kind of like a little bit too personally because we're human. So we do that. And so he's just like, yeah, insert the playfulness, insert the fun and flirt.
Yeah, right. That's another thing that seems to go, right? You don't flirt with your spouse anymore. And those are all great tips. What are some other ways, like for couples, maybe you've been married? I mean, you can be married however long, right? But like say you've been married 10 years and you're in kind of a rut. Like what should someone listening do?
If you're in a rut, what should you do? That's a very like open. I guess I would work on what do you do for, like, again, like, do you guys do anything fun alone? And what do you do for fun? Do you like to travel? Maybe lean towards traveling more. Is there something you can grow together as a couple doing? Maybe you guys both have always wanted to go learn. I know the big thing here in Dallas is either pickleball or mahjong. Like all the women go play mahjong. I know maybe that's not a couple thing. Maybe it is. I don't know. And then there's also different leagues, the women league, male league. They go do pickleball. Maybe that could be your new thing. But if you're in a rut, you know what? The other thing I would recommend is if you're like, no, I can't be playful, I can't be fun, hire an intimacy coach, hire a marriage coach. Like there are people who are trained who see other people all day long. Like, what do you do when you have hypertension? What do you do when you have acne or when you have wrinkles? You go see the dermatologist. There are people who know more than you and can look at you more objectively than you can your own skin, right? Than you can your own relationship, your own emotions. So I always recommend just asking for help. I mean, I'm a huge believer in outsourcing. I have so many people on my team working for me. When I was younger, it's like I couldn't even raise my hand to ask for help. Now I'm like, now I ask my own residents and fellows to look things up and teach me. I'm like, this is why I work at a teaching hospital. Could you go look that up for me? Thank you.
You really flipped the script on that. You're like, you teach me.
And they do.
Yeah, they're always, I'm like, oh, is that the latest study? Yes. But yeah, having that outside person who can give sort of unbiased, objective feedback is key. Because when you're in it, I mean, first of all, if you notice that you're in a rut, I mean, I guess that's probably the first step, right? You've recognized that there's a problem and hopefully you want to work on fixing that. But it's hard to fix ourselves, right? Like we see it in other people and we see the wrong in other people, but it's hard to see what to do next. So yeah, having a relationship coach, a therapist, or whoever, or someone in your religious community, like give you some perspective, and as a couple too, that can be helpful. But do you get this question, like, what if only one spouse wants to do it?
I actually prefer to coach one person in the relationship. I do have a handful of couples clients, but most of the time it's the women physicians who come to me, or, the women professionals, and I talk to them and they completely change their whole relationship by what you said, that word, you said it, perspective. Like they're not thinking about things, but from one perspective, their own. Like, and there are so many different ways to look at one situation. You've got the universe, you've got, if you believe in a higher power, their perspective, your spouse's perspective, your children's perspective, your dog's perspective. Like there's so many different ways to look at maybe one argument that you had. And it's so funny because some of the times I'm talking with a couple and they completely recite the same situation completely differently because we hear what we want to hear. So if we feed ourselves what we want to hear and come, right, with that knowledge, with that awareness, then we can move our relationship in the right direction on our own because we've decided to hold the frame. We're like holding the relationship and guiding it into a lighter, happier, more joyful place.
This is an issue I hear with friends and I see it too. Like you can't force someone to change, right? But again, like if you change, you'll be amazed at how the people around you respond to you differently and how they inadvertently change because you've changed. So I think I used to think like, oh, this situation's never going to get better because I have no control, I have no power. And some things it can really feel that way, that you're limited. But again, if you change how you come to the table, your perspective, what you're bringing, you'll be amazed how the people around you change. And I see this like with my children and how I respond to them and then how they behave and act differently, and your spouse. So yeah, I think don't get discouraged if you're like, this is so one-sided. My partner is not interested in changing at all. They don't see a problem. Well, focus on you, because when you do that, I bet you're going to see improvement and some positive changes in them as well.
And the word change, I'll say, Dr. Mina, the word change is scary to a lot of people. Transition is scary and hard because people associate it with maybe extra work or extra effort or things that they're going to have to get used to, right? And so like when we say change, that doesn't mean you're 100% changing who you are. You are keeping all the positive, all the things you love about yourself. And then you're identifying what it is and how do you want to show up even more fabulous, even more feminine, even more flirty. And you get to decide what is the new identity you want to take on. A lot of us feel like we're in a rut or feel angry and resentful because we're identifying as an angry and resentful and in a rut person. And when we start to decide, oh, I'm going to take 15 minutes for that bubble bath every night. Like I'm going to do my skincare routine and actually feel all the surfaces on my face, not just pat it on real quick. Like I'm going to take time for myself. You get to identify with that person who takes care of yourself and who's too fabulous and who's fun and flirty and feminine.
Overarching theme in your line of work and mine is take care of yourself first, right? And take care of yourself on a deeper, more meaningful way, a more internal way than focusing on these sort of external things, whatever they can be. Focus really like deep, important work on bettering yourself, improving yourself, and you'll just see your skin gets better, your relationships gets better, your life gets better. So I love that. And so amazing to get to talk with you. And I feel like I need to maybe bump up my date nights. Maybe just once a month is not going to cut it, but I love having you here and getting to share all these great pearls with us. So I know that listeners are going to want to find you, connect with you. You've got a lot going on. So where can people find you?
Connect with me on Instagram. I'm on Instagram a lot, Kate Mangona, MD. And then I also have a podcast called Love Lab MD. It has 150 episodes that you can listen. But connect with me on Instagram, send me a message, let me know, what you actually took home from this episode and what worked. I love when I hear that somebody actually positively changed their marriage or positively enhanced their relationship with their spouse because of a tip or something we talked about. That just fills me with joy. That's why I do it, right? Or else all day I'd be reading x-rays all day long, but I only do that part of the day.
In a dark room by yourself reading x-rays. Well, I'm glad you're not doing that. And you're also coming out and doing the work that you're doing. So I will include all that in the show notes. And I really appreciate you being here. And we'll see everyone next week.